Right, the top story though. On the night of December 25th, an Indian Army Special Forces unit carried out a strike across the line of control in the Rawalkot sector of Jammu and Kashmir. At least 4 Pakistani soldiers were killed. The operation was tactical. Its intent was clear: to avenge the killing of 4 Indian troops by Pakistan's Border Action Team over this past weekend. Here's a report.
It was not a surgical strike. Nevertheless, sources said the cross-line of control attack by an Indian Army Special Forces unit on Monday night had some of those elements, notably good planning and precise intelligence. Also, the operation was carried out in a sector where the terrain favoured India. The mission was clear: to avenge the killing of 4 Indian Army personnel, including a major, in the Rajouri sector last Saturday. The Indians retaliated in the Rawalkot Poonch sector, where they are in a tactically advantageous position. A small Special Forces unit crossed the LOC on the night of December 24th. They entered about 300 meters. Under the cover of darkness, they laid mines and explosives near Pakistan's Rakchokri post. At dusk on Christmas Day, the explosives were set off. The Pakistani troops attempted to escape. The Indian commandos opened fire, killing at least 4 Pakistanis. The gunfight lasted about 12 minutes.
हमारी सेना कमजोर नहीं है और पाकिस्तान की द्वारा ये हरकत की गई है, इसको हम क्षमा नहीं कर सकते. हमारे जवान और रक्षा मंत्रालय में वो ताकत भी है, हमारे फोर्सेस में ताकत है और 3 दिन में इसका जवाब मिल चुका है और हम किसी भी हालत में पाकिस्तान की किसी भी हरकतों को जवाब देने के लिए हमारे जवान तैयार हैं और कोई भी आतंकी घटनाओं के लिए यहाँ पर कश्मीर में भी हमारे फोर्सेस और पुलिस भी तैयार है.
Official sources in Delhi described the assault as a localized tactical level operation, planned and executed probably under the direction of a brigadier.
पाकिस्तान लगातार पिछले 2-3 वर्षों में सीज फायर का इतना जबरदस्त उल्लंघन कर रहा है. हमारे सेना के लोग मारे जा रहे हैं, हमारे जो सिविलियंस है वो मारे जा रहे हैं. 40,000 लोगों को अपना घर छोड़ के पलायन करना पड़ा है कई बार. तो स्वाभाविक रूप से ये चिंता का विषय है.
We have always saluted the valor and courage of our soldiers. They are the ones that have protected our sovereignty and they have protected us on the borders. They are doing that once again. For that, our salute to them. But that this should not be politicized.
India's retaliation underscores a vital point, that there has been a massive spike in ceasefire violations by Pakistan. The Indian government says Pakistan violated the ceasefire along the line of control 881 times so far this year. Pakistan violated the ceasefire along the international border 110 times till the end of November. At least 30 Indian security personnel have been killed in these ceasefire violations this year. The Indian Army has made it clear that Monday's retaliatory action is not a one-off, and it will continue to strike across the line of control to retain the tactical and psychological edge. Bureau Report, WION.
And make no mistake, Saturday's transgression was only the latest in cross-border violations by Pakistan, which have shot up by no less than 4 times this year. The Pakistani Rangers violated the ceasefire 881 times along the line of control. In 2015, that number was at 228. There was also a spike in terrorist activity across Jammu and Kashmir. 2017 also saw an unprecedented security operation by the Indian military in the valley. More than 210 terrorists were killed in different operations by the army, Jammu and Kashmir police and the paramilitary. But India continues to pay the price for peace. 30 lives were lost to cross-border firing this year alone. This includes 14 army personnel, 12 civilians and 4 border security force personnel. Joining me this evening on the broadcast to talk about India and Pakistan, the relationship as it were, is Lieutenant General retired Syed Ata Hasnain. He's a defense expert and a prolific writer. He's joining us from New Delhi. With us from Pakistan is Ahmad Shaheen, a senior journalist who joins us from Islamabad. Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you both for being with us here on the broadcast. General Hasnain, if I can come to you first, the word surgical strikes has come up a lot in the mainstream media today. But for the benefit of our viewers, can you help us understand what exactly this operation was that the Indian Armed Forces undertook on the night of December 25th?
Thank you, Aisha. Thank you for that. Firstly, to explain to your viewers The surgical strikes were conducted almost 15 months ago on the 28th of September 2016, and they were at a strategic level. 5 teams of the special forces had gone across and carried out raids on precision targets, which were essentially launch pads or terrorist camps. Now, what's different this time? This is a single action which has been carried out approximately 130 kilometers away from the scene at which, on the 22nd of December, had the Pakistani border action team coming in and ambushing our soldiers and killing an officer and 3 Jawans.
Right.
In retaliation for that, what the Indian Army has done is not a strike, but a tactical strike. This tactical strike, which is planned and organized at the brigade level, has been conducted by not the special forces, but by a Ghatak, which is a commando element of an infantry unit, at a place called Rakh Chikri. Incidentally, for interest's sake, Rakh Chikri is also a place where both times in 1965 and in 1971, serious fighting was seen. Our troops have gone approximately 300 to 500 meters inside and carried out laying of mines and prepared IEDs, for which you have switches, remote switches that are available.
Right.
And when, under observation, when they have observed the Pakistani patrols moving, these IEDs have been detonated, and thereafter they have been fired upon and killed. 4 Jawans of the Pakistan Army have been confirmed to be killed. What Pakistan is now indulging in is an admission that they have had 4 fatal casualties, but they are denying that Indian troops carried out a crossing of the line of control. What is the reason why they are denying the crossing of the line of control? Just like they denied the surgical strikes and the crossing of the line of control a year ago, 15 months ago. The reason simply is this, for your viewers, let me explain, is that Pakistan has repeatedly failed. It failed in 1971, it failed in 1980 in Siachen,
right,
to deliver what is supposed to deliver for nation. Thereafter, it has failed in 1999 in Kargil. It failed in 2011 to prevent the Americans coming in and carrying out a raid at Abbottabad. And so, they are under tremendous psychological pressure to admit that, at a choice, the Indian Army can at any stage cross over the line of control and carry out strikes at will.
All right, so this is clearly a face-saving activity on Pakistan's part, especially the conversation that we've seen happen ever since news of this Ghatak force operation that was carried out. Let me go across to Emmer Shaheen. Emmer, you know, there's been so much that's been happening between India and Pakistan over the past week. It started with General Bajwa saying that he wants peace with India. Just a few short days later, we heard of, the border action team neutralizing Indian soldiers on the other side of the border. And of course, there was the meeting between Kulbhushan Jadhav's wife and mother and him himself. What commentary have all of these events generated within Pakistan?
The commentary that's being generated in Pakistan, in contrast to what I have heard, the commentary that's going on your channel, is the exact opposite. It's kind of the same jingoism and celebration of, I feel rather sad to hear that it just sounds like a little bit of a celebration that 4 people have been killed. And it's not just the Indian media that's doing that. The Pakistani media also, you say it's unprovoked. Pakistan, when the Indian side attacks Pakistan, calls it unprovoked. What is unprovoked? It is all provoked. It's a tit for tat, as your headline was saying. It's a continuity cycle. It's been happening. It is bloodshed. And anybody who doesn't condemn it, to me, I see it as warmongering. And I was looking at your report earlier on, in which you mentioned that 881 times Pakistan has violated the line of control, but it doesn't mention how many times India has violated the line of control. It mentions 30 lives have been lost on the Indian side. It doesn't mention how many lives have been lost on the Pakistani side. And it's the same scenario when you talk about Pakistan. The narrative is that India has violated the line of control these many times. Right. Pakistan has lost so many lives. And I see this as jingoism, where we're trying to legitimize bloodshed across the border because it sounds like a victory. This is not a cricket match. Real people have been killed on both sides of the border, and anything less than condemning both the killings would be cautious, I think.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've got some more information on where we see this relationship heading in 2018 and beyond. So we'll talk more about whether this is a vicious cycle and whether there is going to be an end of any sort in the years ahead. Stay with me, both of you, because there seems to be another player that gains from that unrest along the India-Pakistan border. We're talking about China. It so far has been generous in its contributions towards Pakistan. Beijing will invest $62 billion into Pakistan's economy for the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, or CPEC. But every contribution comes at a cost. China wants Pakistan to keep India engaged with unrest at the border so that Indian resources continue to remain trapped. Beijing also thinks that the restive border will keep New Delhi occupied with issues at home so that the Indian government can't pursue other interests abroad. Let me go back to General Hasnain. General Hasnain, China is known to be, very aggressive and ruthless when it comes to pursuing its economic policies, its economic interests. We've seen it happen in Sri Lanka, we've seen it happen in Nepal, in the Maldives now, and Pakistan, of course, an all-weather ally of China. Do you feel that there is water in this argument that as long as there is unrest between India and Pakistan and India stays engaged on the border, China has a tremendous amount to gain?
Absolutely, Aisha. In fact, maybe a couple of years ago, China had a more sedate kind of an attitude towards Indo-Pak relations and what was happening in Kashmir and what was happening on the line of control. But I think particularly for the last 2 or 3 years, and now after the Doklam incident, the Doklam standoff, I think there has been a tremendous amount of consultation between Pakistan and China. And the possibility of collusion between them, which has always been evident, obviously got a spurt, a larger and a possible enhancement. And that is what they are looking at. How can China ensure that it can keep India intimidated along the Himalayan front and prevent India from being able to carry out a redeployment of its forces from the Pakistani side onto the eastern and the northern borders. This type of a thing, which has happened on the line of control, always assists in this. In addition to this, one more point which I have for you is that Pakistan would always want to carry out intimidation on line of control simply because that is the easiest place to send a message to the international community. If cross-border firing alone doesn't take notice, then it is certain incidents of the kind which have happened at Keri, which obviously draw the attention of the world. And it's primarily because now with the domination achieved by the Indian army inside the Kashmir Valley, it is becoming extremely difficult to carry out large-scale strikes. Having said that, India should be prepared entirely for the possibility of a large-scale kind of a terrorist strike anywhere in India. And we are glad to see that of late we have got alerts for all our airports for the new year and beyond.
All right. Staying with China, though, Emma, if I can ask you, is there a view in Pakistan that China is, keeping everything that we've already spoken about in mind, that China is also concerned about its economic investment in Pakistan, given the sort of instability that is rampant in certain areas, and especially where CPEC goes through?
I would like to address very quickly the conspiracy theory that China might want to engage India with Pakistan so that China can grow all by itself alone. It's nothing more than conspiracy theory, something I would never be able to buy. If China really wants to prosper, especially with the CPEC and other projects going on in Pakistan, you see a lot of Chinese people now in the cities of Pakistan. China would want a stabilized region in order to benefit from those projects. There is absolutely no way that the Chinese would have such a flawed strategy that they would invest billions and billions of dollars into a region and then be happy with that region being destabilized. China has time and again raised issues of stabilization, the peace, at least peace in the areas where the installations are happening and generally in the region. Pakistan's army has taken up many of those issues very seriously. Pakistan army has allegedly has a lot of stakes in those business deals as well. So Pakistan army is doing whatever it can to not only create safe environment for the economic corridor that is being built,
right,
but also to create the impression that it's a safe place. So I mean, alleging that China wouldn't want a secure and stable region, India and Pakistan, would be.
But having said that, Emma, China is also the country that has come to Pakistan's defense on its record against terrorist organizations. It's the same country that's prevented the United Nations from proscribing a terrorist like Masood Azhar. Stay with me, the two of you, because this gives me the right segue into our next, stack that we've got lined up for you. The global community has little confidence when it comes to Pakistan, especially after the recent political upheaval. The ruling PMLN is without a face after Nawaz Sharif was disqualified from office. The Pakistan People's Party, which is being led by the Bhutto scion Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, suffered a massive drop in popularity in the last general elections. The party is now down to double digits in both houses of parliament. Imran Khan, meanwhile, and his party Tehreek-e-Insaf could emerge as a dark horse in the 2018 elections, but the party still doesn't enjoy countrywide support. The influence of Pakistan's military on mainstream politics could only grow if their proposed plan to mainstream terrorist groups goes through. The military support to radical political parties like the Tehreek-e-Labbaik and Milli Muslim League has been an open secret. The Tehreek-e-Labbaik is a hardline Islamist political party, and it was responsible for the recent unrest in Islamabad. The Milli Muslim League, meanwhile, is backed by none other than Hafiz Saeed, who was the brains behind the 26/11 Mumbai attacks, which killed no less than 166 people. Emma, do you feel that this continued, impasse between India and Pakistan is in some ways to the benefit of political parties, because it sort of is the perfect sort of distraction from pressing domestic issues?
I think when you're talking about the main two political parties who have been in power, discounting the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, the cricketer-led political party, it might be something to look away from the real issues, but the two main political parties, People's Party and the PMLN, have been very responsible, especially in the last 5-10 years, regarding issues pertaining to India. They have not been doing warmongering. Yes, there sometimes some jingoism is required by the masses, and some of that is done. But they have been mostly responsible towards India, and it does not benefit them. India and Pakistan relationships, when they turn sour, does not benefit. It's not the policy of the main two political parties that it would benefit them, any issues, regarding that. But the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf has a very soft corner for the military and military activities. They play on this card more. The enmity of Pakistan with India is played by the pro-military parties more than the other two established parties, which is the PPP and the PMLN. It is people like Hafiz Saeed who benefit the most when these kind of surgical strikes or any kind of enmity happens. And that is the kind of point I wanted to raise as well, that when India doing, taking revenge, as you guys are saying, when India takes revenge in Pakistan, it's actually benefiting Hafiz Saeed and other political parties that have the same mindset in Pakistan. The warmongering doesn't help. The warmongering helps the warmongers in Pakistan. It doesn't help the peaceful people in Pakistan.
General Hasnain, I'm running out of time on this segment, but I would like you to react to Emma's assessment before the break that the public consumption of these strikes, such as India has done today, only works to the benefit of people like Hafiz Saeed. What do you say to that?
Aisha, I think you summed it up very well when you had initially given out what the political situation in Pakistan itself is. Let me just take a cue from that. It's a very peculiar situation which is existing in Pakistan. The strategic political space is wide open to be occupied by anyone. Unfortunately, the political parties themselves are so weak that actually the occupation of that space is being done by organizations such as the Milli Muslim League of Hafiz Saeed and the Tehreek-e-Labbaik, recently in action in Islamabad.
Right.
And Milli Muslim League is even being supported by proxy by someone like Pervez Musharraf. Now, when you have this kind of a situation, obviously there's a lot of rabble-rousing which is going to take place, and they're going to take advantage of this kind of a situation, which is going to be initiated at the line of control by them, and the response from our side will be used by them, just like it was just assessed. It will be used by them to carry out anti-India propaganda. There is a huge negative, radical strain in the streets. Also, people like Mumtaz Qadri, the assassin of it may emerge politically in the elections in 2018. It should be taking control of this kind of a situation.
Right.
Obviously, recently General Bajwa has gone and spoken to the Senate committee on this. I'm sure this has been spoken about. But we need to see more action on ground.
Absolutely. We need to see whether, these...
such as Hafiz Saeed and the gang of people such as these Tehreek-e-Labbaik. It's only then that a situation like this...
So it has to definitely go beyond just these professions. There has, or rather, professed statements or intent by people like General Bajwa. It's got to translate into much more than that. We leave it at that, gentlemen. General Hasnain, Emir Shaheen, thank you both for joining us this evening, for also the decorum that you maintained in that conversation. Before we turn our attention, though, from India and Pakistan, it's not surprising in many ways that the ties between the two countries are at an all-time low. Take a look at these images from 2 years ago. India's ties with Pakistan nosedived after Prime Minister Narendra Modi's surprise visit to Lahore. Here's what's happened since that meeting. The relationship has remained strained in the aftermath of terrorist attacks on military bases in India's Pathankot and Uri. India retaliated last year by conducting surgical strikes on terror launch pads inside Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Now, the continued ceasefire violations and the Kulbhushan Jadhav case have now proven to be the latest flashpoints in an already fraught relationship. With fragile political situation best described, or rather the political situation in Pakistan best described as fragile, there's a little hope for talks before the 2018 Pakistan general election. Kulbhushan Jadhav's mother and wife met him in Islamabad. The entire exercise was designed by Pakistan to humiliate and intimidate the Jadhav family. India has condemned Pakistan's tactics and warned it against any further mischief.
Pakistan is a military state. Militaries are tuned to sniff danger and then move swiftly to eliminate it. Military units are supposed to be stationed at cantonments or garrisons. In Pakistan, the military has ruled the country for decades, and when those trained to kill interact with civilians, they adapt and they start seeing danger in normal things, in clothes and shoes, and of course anything that moves. They become paranoid. It was this paranoia that Pakistan displayed when jailed Indian Kulbhushan Jadhav's wife and mother visited Islamabad. Imagine a country of 20 crore people, a leading exporter of terror, terrified of two harmless and distressed ladies. A woman whose husband is on death row in a foreign land, a mother whose son is on death row, and yet when they walk, Pakistan recoils.
इनको पहले सिक्योरिटी चेक किया गया, उनके कपड़े तब्दील करवाए गए, दफ्तर हाजा में कपड़े रखे गए थे, उनको वो कपड़े पहनवाए गए, इसके अलावा उनका मेकअप भी धुलवाया गया, उनका चेहरा धुलवाया गया.
Picture this. Pakistan arranged the meeting in a shipping container. Yes, in a shipping container, stationed at the parking lot of Aga Shahi block of the Foreign Ministry. The container was bugged, there were cameras all around, and of course a glass wall separating Kulbhushan Jadhav from his wife and mother. What we are going to tell you next is even more outrageous, but you need to hear it to understand to what extent Pakistan can stoop.
The Pakistani press was allowed on multiple occasions to approach family members closely, harass and hector them. Under the pretext of security precautions, the cultural and religious sensibilities of family members were disregarded. The mother of Sri Jadhav was prevented from talking in their mother tongue, although this was clearly the natural medium of communication. Deputy High Commissioner was initially separated from family members who were taken to the meeting without informing him. The meeting was started without his presence.
Pakistan unleashed hostile press on the Jadhav family Pakistan even forced Jadhav's mother and wife to change their clothes. The Indian official was kept away, but that's not the end of the atrocities.
For some inexplicable reason, despite her repeated requests, the shoes of the wife of Sri Jadhav were not returned to her after the meeting. From the feedback we have received of the meeting, it appears that Sri Jadhav was under considerable stress and is speaking in an atmosphere of coercion. We also regret that, contrary to assurances, the overall atmosphere of the meeting was intimidating insofar as family members were concerned. The manner in which the meeting was conducted and its aftermath was clearly an attempt to bolster a false and unsubstantiated narrative of Sri Jadhav's alleged activities.
A false narrative is what paranoid Pakistan has tried to build around Kulbhushan Jadhav, and India was quick to condemn Pakistan's crude attempts to intimidate and humiliate Jadhav's mother and wife, who have met the Indian External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj on their return to India.
Family of Kulbhushan Jadhav today met External Affairs Minister of India Sushma Swaraj at her residence. Senior officials of Ministry of External Affairs, which include Foreign Secretary S. Jaishankar, were present here at the meeting. They took stock of the situation and also got a first-hand account of the meeting that happened in Pakistan, Islamabad, in which the Kulbhushan Jadhav and his family met. The meeting that was arranged by the Pakistani authorities.
The case is pending in the International Court of Justice. Pakistan has shamelessly put its malice on display. India now has to make a quick move to save Kulbhushan Jadhav. Rahul Dalal, WION.
There's a new report out that's going to sound like music to India's ears. The country is all set to become the 5th largest economy next year in dollar terms. It'll get there by overtaking the United Kingdom and France. The London-based Centre for Economic and Business Research, or CEBR, painted an overall upbeat scenario for the global economy for the next year. The boost is mainly due to cheap energy and technology prices. Now, CEBR's report places India's growth as part of a trend in Asia. According to it, the region's economies will increasingly dominate the top 10 largest ones over the next 15 years. The overall view held by economists has been that India's growth was slowed by restrictions on high-value banknotes last year, better known as demonetization, and the rollout of the goods and services tax in this year. Meanwhile, the report says China is likely to overtake the United States as the world's #1 economy in 2032. Also, the UK looks like it'll lag behind France for the next couple of years, but the swap will only be temporary because CEBR predicts that Brexit's impact on the British economy won't be as bad as is feared. But we're focusing on the outlook for the Indian economy. Graham Robinson, Director of the Global Construction Perspective London, is joining us right now on the broadcast. Thanks very much, sir, for speaking with us here at WION. What parameters were considered while looking at economic growth, like for countries such as India?
Yes, good evening. Yes, with India, one of our most exciting economies globally. I mean, when you look at India and you look at growth projected all the way to 2032, you can see that some of the really big drivers are some of the basic population numbers that will drive growth, but particularly what we term a demographic dividend as well. So more of that population which is already growing, entering the working age population and then boosting output. But other factors are really important as well. Not only the leap with technology. Most East Asian countries have relied upon foreign investment, inward investment to deliver growth. But India is really powering forward with its technology sector.
All right.
And,
but do you foresee any major challenges to India's economic growth in 2018 and beyond?
Well, I was going to say that one of the big challenges from our perspective, looking at India, is infrastructure, which has lagged behind. And in the past 3 or 4 years, lagged, we think, quite significantly behind. That has both an opportunity and a challenge. And the opportunity there is to make all of the infrastructure in India smart. And we're aware of the Smart Cities program, but other infrastructure needs to be smarter. I think this will really boost productivity and help with overall growth in India. And this is really an opportunity that India has that other countries just don't have, because, take for instance China, and China's One Belt One Road program. It's an investment in physical infrastructure, whereas I think India has the opportunity to invest in technology and combine that with infrastructure to make that smart, boost productivity.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Mr. Robertson, thanks very much for joining us this evening and sharing your perspective with us on that story. Move on. Our relations between India and the Maldives on the mend. What else does one make of reports that the Maldives is pushing for a high-level bilateral visit from India? Could a high-level bilateral visit imply one by Narendra Modi, or could it be at the level of a foreign minister or national security advisor? So far, no details have been forthcoming, but for this nugget that the visit could take place early in the next year. If the reports are confirmed, it does suggest that the Maldives wants to put bilateral relations back on track after a series of derailments. We're talking about Maldives detaining 3 local leaders for meeting India's ambassador Akhilesh Mishra. An op-ed piece in an online local language website describing India as the enemy and being abusive of Prime Minister Modi. Maldives has also signed a free trade agreement with China. This conflicts with its India First policy. It's reportedly allowed Chinese submarines to dock in Maldives as well. Add to that, the island nation has moved diplomatically very close to China. This development has stirred fears in the Indian security establishment of a Chinese takeover of the Maldives. The island country is heavily in debt to China, and the concern is, unable to pay his debts, Yamin may be left with no option but to walk into the Chinese trap. At the same time, President Yamin has turned increasingly authoritarian. Democracy in the Maldives today hangs by a thread. Threatened by Yamin's government, India has been uncomfortable with these developments, but Maldives is a sovereign country. Later, in a damage control exercise, the Maldives President Abdullah Yamin reaffirmed that his government won't allow anti-India rhetoric in the country, but this was like shutting the stable after the horse had bolted. He also indicated that he was anxious to make amends. A free trade agreement with India is on the cards, but South Bloc needs to reassure itself of whether Yamin is playing some deeper game. Now, questions for the President Yamin, in fact. The larger one of that is, what does he really want? Is the offer of a free trade agreement genuine? Important to note also that Maldives produces virtually nothing. Is Yamin motivated by concern over his political future? Could that be the reason why he's cracked down on his political opponents? As India readies to diplomatically reply to the Maldives, it will have time to reflect on the state of current relations and what exactly India wants. And joining me on the broadcast right now is Ahmed Naseem. He's the former Foreign Minister of the Maldives. Good evening, Mr. Naseem. Thanks very much for speaking with us. Are ties between India and the Maldives at a dangerous low?
I believe that we have been, the government of President Yamin has been working at in such a way that the ties between India and Maldives would be at an all-time low. Yes, I believe so, yes.
But having said that, sir, do you feel that the Maldives can afford to isolate a country like India?
That's a very interesting question. You see, however much President Yamin tries to isolate India, which I believe he's trying to do, and not entertaining much of Indian investments in the country, and even previously, he has not been very much in favor of Indian investments in Maldives, because I know this, because I was in the government previously, and these Indian investments were not very welcome. And as far as investments from India side was concerned, and he was always looking for investments from from other sources. So I don't think that this is a situation where India or Maldives can benefit with this arrangement that we are having with China at the moment. I think it is destructive to Maldivian economy because the Maldivian market will be flooded with Chinese goods, and no other country, we do not have a free trade agreement with any other country, and there is actually nothing for us to export to China.
But in addition, sir, to that FTA, 3 councillors have been sacked for meeting with the Indian ambassador to the Maldives. There's the whole anti-Modi editorial. These appear to be Mr. Yamin's attempt at undoing the relationships that were nurtured by his predecessor. Would you agree?
I think he wants to pacify China and go ahead as fast as possible with China and tell China that we don't actually consider India to be a good partner for Maldives, and you are the good partner, and that kind of thing. He's trying to show off to China that he has the courage and the guts to do away with India and then go fully on board with China. And therefore, all these FTA agreements, therefore all the lendings, all the money that is coming into the country from China, all these things must increase so that the relationship with China would in the end become totally irreversible. I think that's his aim.
Mr. Naseem, thank you very much for speaking with us here at WION. Speaking of numbers, the figure as far as vultures in India goes had hit a dismal low a few years ago. But now conservations have reason to cheer. The birds are back in their thousands. Let's take a look at this special report.
5,000. You could talk of that number as a milestone in world conservation history. This possibly is the world's largest congregation of vultures in years. 5,000 vultures of different species have been seen wintering in a 5,600 hectare conservation zone in India's desert state of Rajasthan. Jorbir, in India's border district of Bikaner, is on the back page of a Hindi daily, but on the front lines of world raptor conservation. Luckily, it falls on the route of vultures migrating from Eurasia and Mongolia. It is also one of the 4 identified vulture breeding grounds in India, apart from the ones in Pinjore, Guwahati and Bhopal in the country's northwest, east and centre.
This congregation of 5,000 vultures is certainly a good sign of vultures and vulture conservation in India. Because vultures, we noticed in around 1990s, their population was going down rapidly, and one of the main reasons which was identified was diclofenac.
The vulture breeding program grew following a dramatic decline in the population of the birds in the 1990s. This program ran parallel to efforts to phase out the popular anti-inflammatory drug diclofenac. Consumption of animals treated with diclofenac was identified as the cause of vulture deaths in the subcontinent.
Non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug, which is principally diclofenac, which is the ingestion of this animal with this drug causes the kidney failure of the vultures, and there was a rapid decline in their population.
At the Vulture Restoration Project in Changamanga in Pakistan, experts are skeptical about releasing the vultures they have bred for years.
It was a very long-term process to attain this successful breeding. So for a while, up till 2020, we don't have any release plans until we have a controlled environment outside this center as well, because besides diclofenac, other few threats have also been identified.
That's why the congregation at Jorbir stands out. These birds have been worshipped in Indian mythology as Jatayu. The Parsi towers of silence are incomplete without them. Now decimated because of a drug, Nature's cleanup crew is looking up to your support to soar high again. Bureau Report, WION.